This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
Follow the money. That's what I always say. You always follow the money. Yeah.
This is Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard on VSiN.
Yes, follow the money. Paulie and the Moose. Mitch out all week. VSiN, the sports betting network. And a loaded show coming up. We'll talk to Nick Whalen at the bottom of the hour. Win totals we like. Little NFC East as Moose is back from Giants camp and practice. Also talk to Love My Baxter in studio coming up. Prison guard for over 20 years. We'll dig into that. And also won Grandissimo last year, had a share of that entry, and won Survivor with 2 entries in 2021. And Paul Charchian starting his weekly visits. We'll talk some props, AFC North, and also fantasy with all the drafts, surprises, disappointments, who to take, double shot with Charch coming up. Moose, good to see you. How you doing, friend?
I'm doing well, Paulie. Good to see you as well. I think last time that I filled in for Mitch, it was right before Christmas. We were talking Harbaugh coaching search,
yes,
New York Giants.
You nailed it.
That's the last time I did a show with you, so it's good to be back. Football right around the corner. We already got the Hall of Fame game in a rearview mirror.
Yep.
More preseason action coming this week, so good to see you as always.
Yep. We'll run down some movement. Seattle took money today. We have games this week. There's 6 games on Thursday. We'll talk about those coming up in a second. We can start there since you called it and you just got back from practice. We're on opposite sides here of the win total. What do you think of the Giants this year and all the hype and the number one bet team over with their win total?
Yeah, you know what bothers me, Paulie, first off, is that everyone loves them. Aside from you. I mean, everyone,
yeah.
You know, I talk to a lot of people around the league, and a lot of people are pinpointing the Giants as to be that team, not necessarily make the playoffs, but that Harbaugh is going to have a real impact year number one. And I think there's something to be said for that. I don't think there's any question about it. Listen, there's a lot to like. He's got an expanded coaching staff, there's no doubt. Year 2, when you're looking at Jackson Dart, great that Malik Neighbors didn't start on the PUP list. I think Isaiah Likely is going to be a fantasy star. I think he's going to be a star at the tight end position as long as he can stay healthy, and he's going to be used a lot in that Matt Nagy offense. And you look at the offensive line with Mayonoa being drafted to play guard out of Miami, 10th overall. As long as Andrew Thomas stays healthy at the left tackle position, there's a lot to like about that offensive line. Defensively, the front 7, even with the loss of Dexter Lawrence, I don't think is going to be really much of an issue because I think they can get after the quarterback. And everything you're hearing about Arvell Reese early on in camp after the 12 days down in West Virginia is real. The concern you'd have about the Giants is a little bit of the cornerback situation when you look at Newsome, Paulson Adebo. Obviously, some of the guys they drafted, Hood, the kid out of Tennessee in the 2nd round. That's a little bit of a concern, but I think the early returns on Denard Wilson's defense is that they're going to attack. I think overall, coaching matters in the National Football League. We saw it last year with Liam Cohen down in Jacksonville, Mike Vrabel up there in New England. Look at the job that Sean Payton's done out there in Denver. So Harbaugh was never, as the owner and the Ravens said, was never going to go to a place that didn't have didn't have a quarterback in place. He believes in Jackson Dart. I think Dart's going to take a massive step forward this year, and I have concerns about some other teams at NFC East. So you and I are going to be on opposite sides of things.
All right.
I think the Giants are feeling pretty good about themselves.
Good breakdown. I'm concerned about the hype, and everyone likes them. Number 2, always the slow starts. Number 3, the schedule.
Yep.
Maybe you don't think it's that difficult then, because I think it's a difficult schedule. Can you think they can get to 8 wins, though?
Well, I think they can, but let's be honest. I mean, if they're able to find a way in that Sunday night game, and that's going to be a huge game against the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think they're going out to Los Angeles and knocking off the Rams on Monday Night Football, right? So the Rams have separated themselves not only from everybody in the NFC, but everybody in the National Football League. But then you come back home, it's the Titans and the Cardinals. You have concerns now in Washington. Laramie Tunsil with the torn tricep. Obviously, Jane Daniels got to stay healthy, but they're adding Stephon Diggs into that wide receiver room. And then you get the Saints at home, right? So, and then you take on the Texans where, what version of C.J. Stroud are you going to get this season for the Houston Texans? Defensively, it's a championship defense. There's no doubt about it, but defense can also score, right? And they're not going to be the 85 Bears, or they're not going to be, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with John Lynch anchoring that defense from in the back end. So I look at the Giants where I think the schedule is set up to where if they're able to knock off Dallas, you could be looking at a 3-1 football team through the first 4 games, conceivably speaking, if things go really, really well. I think the thing to follow about the Giants, though, is the continued progress of Malik Neighbors, because there's nobody in that receiver room that can do on the football field what Malik Neighbors can do. And
so you might be down on other teams in the division. As you said, Tunsil got hurt over the weekend, and I don't know what to expect out of Washington, who went from 12-5 to 5-12.
Yeah, and that's the other issue. They were really old last year. I mean, Paulie, you saw that team a year ago. They went all in. They added Tunsil. They added Deebo Samuel, who was a disaster year one, and then he's now back signing a one-year, $7 million deal with the San Francisco 49ers. You had guys like Von Miller on defense. I mean, they were just really, really old, and I think their GM, Adam Peters, looked at it and said, I'm going to lean into it. I think we're one step away, and then other issues reared their ugly head. Then you throw in the other aspect, massive changes on that coaching staff for Dan Quinn during the course of the offseason as well. Listen, is Jane Daniels going to be able to stay healthy? He takes an inordinate amount of hits, and he is not the most, I wouldn't say frail. He's very thin if you've ever seen Jane Daniels in person. So you say to yourself, okay, when you look at Daniels, can he stay upright? Can he stay healthy? We know he can throw the football. We know he can really spin it. He was really special his rookie year. I'm not taking anything away from him. I have concerns in other areas of that team. And I have concerns about whether or not they're going to be able to run the football. And now you throw in a big concern with that offensive line, because they heavily invested in that trade to go get Laramie Tunsil. And now he got hurt over the weekend, Paulie, as you mentioned, with that torn tricep.
So the Giants play Saturday morning against the Vikings. That total is moved 2 points, 38.5 up to 40.5. Good quarterback rotation, Dart, Winston, Allen. And for the Vikings, it's Murray, McCarthy, and Wentz as they're battling out who's going to be the number one quarterback there. Murray should win it, but that's a big move that happened in the game Saturday morning. How about also the news over the weekend? The Bengals are up to 7 against the Lions Thursday. That opened 3.5. Bridgewater retires. He took a couple days off for personal reasons and then said, I can't do it anymore. So Luke Altmaier, undrafted rookie, is going to have to take the majority of the snaps for the Lions on Thursday, and they're on a 2-9 straight-up run in the preseason. Big move on the Bengals. How about the news where Teddy, the veteran and a good locker room presence, says that's it for me and calling it quits?
Yeah, I mean, he's had enough. For a guy that came out of Louisville and had big expectations for Teddy Bridgewater, he got a nice career. It's not a bad thing to be a backup quarterback in the National Football League, Paul. You're making a lot of money. You're making a lot of money if you could go out there and do that. So, yeah, Teddy Two Gloves calls it a career. Not exactly what you want to see, and now you understand the line movement when you're looking at the Bengals and the Lions.
Yes, that's moved as well, and they signed Dobbs to a 1-year deal. I can't imagine he's ready to go, maybe a couple snaps on Thursday for the Lions. How about all the injuries with the Bears? I mean, it won't stop. Burden's out for the at least the preseason, and there's cluster injuries in the secondary that Allen's not happy about, and they have to juggle going through. And I don't mind playing against them in their first preseason game as well with the Browns. And the Browns also have a quarterback battle, not only between Watson and Sanders, but also is going to be the backup. But so many injuries with the Bears already, Moose.
Yeah, a ton. I mean, and that's where you say, okay, well, can Caleb Williams, not necessarily here in the preseason. I agree with your point, and I would agree with your take in terms of fading Chicago here a little bit due to all those injuries. But when you take a look at Chicago on the whole, Paulie, Caleb looked like a different guy when he first met with the media when training camp opened up. I'm sure you guys talked about it, where he's down 15 pounds. And I think Ben Johnson, year 2 now with Caleb Williams, under his guys and his guidance, and you're looking at that offense to where last year was really, really good. I think they're expecting Caleb Williams to take another step forward this year, and he's got the talent to go out there and do it. I don't think there's any question. And when you're looking at true franchise quarterbacks in the NFL, how many times you see it with Joe Burrow? You see it with Josh Allen. You see it with Patrick Mahomes. Now, listen, Williams is not there yet. But conceivably speaking, that's why you draft him first overall out of USC, is to potentially get to that level to where you can make up for a lot of deficiencies on your team. And Chicago might just have to do that before they get some of these guys that are banged up back in the lineup.
Yep. Also, quarterback battle in Tennessee for the backup spot. I'm sure you saw this. Will Levis says, I'm one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the league. He's fighting it out with Trubisky as a backup. Tennessee money up to 3 against the 49ers Thursday. Shanahan says he will coach, and also came in today some respected money on Seattle, and it hasn't been good as they take on the Cowboys. Schottenheimer is questioning the effort and how bad the practices have been for the Cowboys. They also, since 2008, 7-24 straight up, Dallas in the preseason. And you got Darnold, Locke, and Milroe with the quarterback rotation with Seattle. They're up to 3.5 in some spots, Moose.
When does Will Levis take a little bit of humble pie? I mean, he stinks. I mean, like when do you look in the mirror and be like, you know what? I'm thankful that I'm still battling for something in the National Football League. I mean, he had every single opportunity to do something in the NFL. Listen, confidence is king, Paul. You see it all over, not just in the National Football League. You got to be the biggest fan of yourself. But
yeah,
I mean, at some point, somebody's got to pull Will Levis aside and say, listen, here's the reality of the situation. You know what? Maybe you could carve out a nice backup career for the rest of your career. But honestly, if you're looking at it, I'd rather have Trubisky backing me up than Will Levis, even with the limitations of Mitch Trubisky.
Yes, and that's a good reason to bet on Tennessee, I think, Thursday night. With all the injuries with the 49ers, and you have Trubisky and Levis fighting for that backup spot, and they should get the majority of the snaps in that game as they're 3 at DraftKings coming up against the Niners. And you have the new coach angle with Saleh, who's 10-3 career in the preseason, and that new coach angle, 60% ATS the last 5 years, although it didn't work out in the Hall of Fame game. And the star of that game, Haynes King, got hurt. So Trask, Carolina had to sign Trask as well. Moose has a lot of win totals that he likes. We'll kick around some NFL win totals coming up on the other side, a plethora of picks and a couple of more tidbits and moves week 1 of the NFL preseason. Also, we'll check in and hear from Ian Rappaport. This is some stunning news that a quarterback who was a top 5 pick could be gone and might just be a journeyman for the rest of his career. We'll hear from Ian Rappaport coming up on Follow the Money, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stick it here.
This is Follow the Money on VSiN.
Games Thursday, 6 of them, and football's back. We'll talk to Paul Charchian later in the show. Fantasy angle and a little fantasy and talk with Nick Whalen from Prop Points. Joins us now, his weekly spot as NFL is back. He joins us on the Progressive guest line. Appreciate the time. Follow him on X at Whalen. No L, it's the number 1. We were just talking about the NFC North and how people are high on the Lions, and big reason why is the schedule. What do you think of Chicago, Minnesota, and Green Bay after Detroit with that rest of that league, Nick?
Yeah, I think this is, on paper at least, the toughest division in the NFL. And I think that'll be borne out once again this season. I think there was a case that it was last year as well, at least as far as the 4th place team in the division being the toughest out week to week. And you know, I'm with the market consensus that Detroit is probably the best team in this division. I think the schedule is a huge reason for that. And we saw New England take advantage of the best schedule in football last year. I think it could be the Detroit Lions' turn. But guys, the other team that I'm really high on in this division, relatively speaking, of course, would be the Minnesota Vikings. And I know right now they're forecasted to be the 4th place team in the NFC North, but it would not surprise me, guys, if this is a team that is making a playoff push. We saw this team remain in the mix last year, despite having the worst quarterback play probably in the NFC for much of the year. Even if you're not a huge Kyler Murray supporter, even if you don't think, he's going to turn over a new leaf in Minnesota, you at least have to admit this is going to be significantly better than Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer and, of course, J.J. McCarthy a year ago. So I think there's still a really high floor in Minnesota. And if the Kyler thing hits, this could be a 10 or 11 win team. The team I'm a little bit lower on, though, is the Green Bay Packers. And look, I say that sitting here in the state of Wisconsin. I've had to sit down with some friends and say, all right, I want to temper expectations this year. I think the defense could get off to a slow start with no Micah Parsons. I think cornerback is still an issue. I think linebacker remains an issue. And this might be, at least on paper, the most question marks we've had about a Green Bay Packers offensive line going into a season in a long time.
Nick, I want to ask you, Paulie and I were talking about earlier, the Rams of 5-1 to win the Super Bowl this year. Do you think they should be that big of a favorite here when looking at the complexion of the NFL?
Probably not that big of a favorite, but you understand why, right? I was listening to a podcast over the weekend and somebody said, this is maybe the most talented roster that we've seen in decades in the NFL. And at first I kind of recoiled at that. And the more I thought about it, it's like, yeah, there aren't that many teams that I think you would put in that category, especially, with the way the modern salary cap works. I mean, I totally understand why the market is reacting as it is. I do think Aaron Donald is eventually going to join this team. And even at this age, even being a couple years out from retirement, he's still probably one of the 15 to 20 best defensive tackles in the NFL at worst. So I understand the hype around the LA Rams, but the thing I worry about is this time last year, guys, Matthew Stafford was sitting in some sort of like futuristic spaceship hyperbaric chamber, at training camp. We were very much worried about how much he had left in the tank. Devontae Adams is getting up there in terms of years. He feels like he has a leg injury every year. I very much worry about Puka Nacua and his style of play. Now, I don't think he actually missed any time last year, but nobody goes to the blue tent more often than Puka Nacua. So it is an older roster. It is certainly a top-heavy roster. But when you look around the NFL, I mean, every hole you could pick in last year's Rams team, it feels like they found a way to plug it.
Follow the money, Paulie and Moose, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Nick Whalen, our guest on the Progressive Guest Line. Catch him every day on Prop Points. Shifting gears to the NBA. We haven't had a chance to talk to you in the crazy offseason. Let's start with the Pistons, who were the 1 seed but lost Harris. You don't know what's going to happen with Duren. And there are 10 teams that are odds on to make the playoffs at Caesars. 2 of those teams are going to be a major disappointment and miss completely. How about with the strength of the East that the Pistons go under their win total?
Yeah, I don't know if I would go as far as to say they'll miss the playoffs, but I would not be surprised if Detroit ends up in that play-in zone in the Eastern Conference. And that's not even necessarily a knock on the Pistons. It's more so a nod to the strength of the Eastern Conference, which is not something that we've said very often over the last 15 or 20 years. It's been a long time since you could argue that the East was better or deeper than the West. But I think on paper, that's how things are shaping up. And part of that assumes that the Kawhi Leonard trade, of course, goes through. I think that significantly changes things for the Toronto Raptors. But, when you look at that win total for Detroit, I was hoping we would get this in like the low to mid 50s, kind of, piggybacking off of that hype from last year. But I think the market is seeing what I see and what a lot of other people see, which is Detroit having basically a best case regular season last year. Outside of Cade Cunningham missing some time toward the end with that collapsed lung, everything came together for the Pistons. I think they played above their level. And then we got to the playoffs and the bubble burst, unsurprisingly. And, this offseason, we saw so many teams in the Eastern Conference shake things up, make additions, get better. I don't think Detroit's gotten any better. If anything, I think they've probably gotten worse. And again, this is a team that I think in a lot of ways defied some of the numbers. They were one of the 3 worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA last year, both in terms of volume and percentage. I don't think they've really done anything to remedy that. So yeah, I would love to, be a firmer under on the Detroit Pistons. I'm still under at 50.5, but I was hoping we'd get this at like 53.5.
Nick, how about Denver? Everyone out west focuses on San Antonio, who lost to the Knicks in the finals, and obviously OKC. What's your take on where Denver stands complexion of the Western Conference NBA?
Yeah, I think there's this idea going around that the Denver Nuggets have maybe missed their window to win another title. And that may be true just because of the strength of OKC and San Antonio. But when it comes to the win total, which you'll find around 49.5, I'm still an over on that. I mean, Denver got to 53 wins last year in what felt like a worst case regular season. I mean, they had the opposite of the Detroit Pistons. Everybody got hurt. Nikola Jokic missed double-digit games for the first time in his career. Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, all these guys missed time. I mean, there was only a handful of games where they had even 4 of their 5 regular starters. So, part of it is just a health bet where you think some of those things that went wrong last season probably come back around. Part of what makes Nikola Jokic the best player in the NBA still, in my opinion, is that durability. And I think it's likely to me that he returns to being that ultra durable superstar this year. We also saw an elevated version of Jamal Murray last season. He's a big part of the reason they still got to 53 wins. So even though it feels like maybe Denver doesn't have that same title ceiling, doesn't have that same upside as the top 2 teams in the West, I still see this as pretty easily a 50-plus win team.
Okay. The Bulls were playing good ball until they started tanking, and then they traded everybody as well. Everyone likes Wilson, the top 5 pick, and how well he played in Summer League. What do you think of the Bulls win total?
For the first time in my life, guys, I'm looking at the Bulls win total and saying I like the over. And I would encourage you, by the way, if you're betting these early NBA win totals, make sure you shop around because you are seeing at times 2 or even 3 win differences between books. And we're talking major books here. I mean, the Bulls are at 27.5 at DraftKings. I believe it's 29.5 over at FanDuel. So obviously you want to take that lower number. You mentioned him with Chicago. I mean, it's not like they were on pace to win 50 games or anything like that, but I think last season looks worse because they pulled the plug, because they completely tanked down the stretch. And there's no longer an incentive to do that the way the NBA is structured. So on one hand, you're not getting as many free wins against the truly bad teams, maybe that you were in the past. But I think Chicago has kind of elevated itself above that bottom tier. I think this could be a play-in team in the Eastern Conference. Now, depth is going to be an issue. That's the big concern for me, but I really like the starting 5 on paper. Josh Giddey, bringing in Norm Powell, who was an all-star last year, Matas Buzelis, who's quietly gotten a lot better over the last 2 seasons, Caleb Wilson, who you mentioned was fantastic in Summer League, and they actually have a real NBA starting center for the first time in a couple of years in Nicholas Claxton, who they rescued from the Brooklyn Nets. He's somebody, his stock has really fallen off over the last couple seasons, but I think a lot of it was just being on the Brooklyn Nets, being a part of this team that truly was not trying to win. And I think he's somebody who could play significantly better in a competitive situation. So I will not be surprised, guys, if the Chicago Bulls are back where they want to be, competing for a play-in spot.
Nick, we have about 2 minutes left. How about Dallas? Return of Kyrie, Cooper Flag, year 2. What's your take on the Mavs win total?
Yeah, the Mavs are another over for me, guys. And, the Western Conference, again, we always think of it as being so difficult, but I think the tables have turned a little bit. I think there may be some free wins on the table in the Western Conference, but I love this Mavs team. And this was a team that was floating around 500 through 40, 50 games, and another team that completely pulled the plug. I want to say they were like 6-26 or something over their final 32 games. They were without Kyrie for the entire year. They had injuries all over the roster. For one, I think Cooper Flag takes a huge step forward. I think he is absolutely the real deal. Final 25 games of last season, he was playing like a probably second or third team All-NBA player. You get Kyrie back, even if you pencil in 20 to 25 missed games for him as usual, they have a lot of depth on this roster. I like a lot of the pieces they brought in. They made some nice moves on the margins, and they have a ton of depth up front, specifically Derek Lively coming back from injury, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. They bring in Morez Johnson out of Michigan. So I kind of see them in the same breath as the Chicago Bulls in the East. Not a team that you're looking at as a dark horse title contender or anything crazy like that, but will not be surprised, guys, if the Mavericks end up as maybe the 9 or the 10 seed in the West and try to sneak their way into the playoffs.
Great to talk to you, my man. Good stuff, and pleasure. Looking forward to it the rest of the season now that NFL's here. Appreciate you.
Good to be back, guys.
All right. Thanks, you won't believe what this baseball card sold for over the weekend, and some vicious beats in MLB win-lose coming up next.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Follow the money. That's what I always say. You always follow the money. Yeah.
This is Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard on VSiN.
All right, good to have Todd in studio. Welcome back. Follow the Money, Paulie and Moose all week. VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And Todd, everyone knows him as Love My Baxter on X. He won in the first year. 2 different entries got there. And he won Circa Survivor. And then last year was part of the Dream Team that cashed in the first Grandissimo. And he split that, and they won $1.1 million, that he had a percentage of that as well. And over almost 20 years, he was a prison guard. And he's got some pictures here. I really want to do a deep dive into that as well. First of all, great to see you. Thanks for coming in studio. And good job honoring Roger Craig as he went into the Hall of Fame with his jersey.
Thanks for having me. Nice seeing you. Yeah, man, big-time Niner fan. Roger Craig should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. Mm-hmm. He finally made it. And then we found out he has some dementia problems. So thank God he got in, man, when he can memorize and remember things. But
yes,
great 49er teams back then. We were spoiled being a Niner fan.
He was, before Marshall Faulk, he was the 1,000 guy.
First guy to do 1,000.
That's right.
And there's only been 2 guys ever since that. That's Marshall Faulk and McCaffrey. Other than that, it's hard to do.
Yeah. So take us through the dream team, how this came about and why you guys decided to join up and form this team in Grandissimo with a $100,000 buy-in.
So majority of the dream team people that were involved were previous winners of either the Millions or the Survivor. So I got hit up last year to be part of it, and I threw up 8%, and I was part of it, and a lot of stress, man, but it's good stress because we keep on coming and keep on signing up.
You got 1.1 million? You whacked it up?
Yeah, but I didn't get the 1.1, but I got a percentage out of that 1.1. But I'll take some of that 1.1.
Was it too many cooks in the kitchen? How hard was that making the pick every week? And who would just dictate, how many guys were on one side, or how difficult it was to get the pick, and when you had that many guys who had a share?
We had a weekly meeting once a week, like a Zoom meeting. Everybody would talk and give opinions, and then the captain and co-captain behind the scenes would figure out what they want to do. So, and then let us know Saturday, right after the picks were in, that who we were going with. So it was good, man. I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I'm back on it again. We're going to run it back.
All right, excellent. So what was that like on Thanksgiving when all the favorites went down, and then it was apparent that you weren't going to have a chop, and how that played out and how you decided to attack it, and maybe if there was a hedge involved once that Philly game happened?
Well, Thursday night was beautiful because all the favorites lost. So going into Friday, we had Philly at home against Bears. I thought for sure we were going to win that. And then they pooped the bed. I can't cuss on this radio show, but they pooped the bed, and then we all got out. So we split. 3 teams split. There was no chop involved. Some poker guys that were involved don't want to chop because they're poker guys and they're too good, and they think that they're rich and they're better than everybody. So we tied them, and we all split the money. So it's all good.
Did you do anything with the Bears game once you knew what had happened and everyone had lost, or did you just let it ride?
No, I let it ride. I didn't do no hedging or anything like that. I let it ride, but I was definitely disappointing, man. I thought for sure Philly was going to handle business at home, and they got dominated, man. Okay,
so what the strategy is going to be upcoming for this season? How many entries? You guys are going to run it back. We'll get into that coming up in the second segment. So the last time you were on, and it was great talking with Mitch, who's out all week though, but you mentioned you were a prison guard in California for almost 20 years. How did you get into that job?
So I was a mailman 15 years right out of high school. One day I finished my route. I had about a 3-hour lunch. I was a lot skinnier. I used to play a lot of basketball. Bumped into one of my junior high buddies, and he told me he was a CO, and I didn't know what a CO was. He said, correction officer. I still didn't know what it was. He said, prison guard. Where's there a prison at? He said, Lancaster. I was a mailman in the San Fernando Valley. He said, Lancaster. It's about an hour away. I go, how much money are you making? This is 2003. He said, over $100,000 a year. I'm working 6 days a week, walking 5-6 miles a day, delivering mail, making 60 G's a year. This dude's telling me I can make 100. So from that point forward, I took the test. It took me like 3 years to get in, and I worked up north. That was my first person up north, and that's how I got in. And my family thought I was crazy by leaving the post office because the post office is a great career job, and I needed to go where more money, of course. And that's how I became a prison guard.
Were you afraid? I mean, what do you think in the first day you're in there and you take the gig and you're with all the inmates?
No, I wasn't afraid because they just prepare you in the academy. Academy was 4 months. Yeah. And we went to other prisons, and it's kind of like the military. I've never been in the military, but the military, they break you down and then they build you back up. Okay. And then when you're ready to go to war, you're ready to go, man. Your ego's gigantic and you're ready to rock and roll. So being a prison guard was the same thing. But I've always been confident, and I grew up kind of rough, so that job was easy for me, man. As long as I know how to talk, treat everybody well. Of course, you can't get along with everybody, but majority of people, especially the older convicts, I got along with.
Why is the talking so important?
Communication's everything, man. Just like a marriage. So you got to talk to these guys.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen. Just like a marriage, you don't listen all the time. Sorry, honey. Hope you're not listening to this. I'm solo, by the way, on this Vegas trip. My wife didn't come, but she's probably listening right now. But yeah, communication is everything in life. At a job, everything you do, man, you got to listen and communicate.
Well, so it's like 300 against 3, though? So here's a picture. Let's start with all these pictures you sent in. This is the control booth. Can you explain what this guy's doing and looking down and what this is like in the prison and how many guys you're responsible for to stay in line and make sure there's not a ruckus or a Donnybrook?
So there's 3 sections in that prison right there. There's A section, B section straight ahead, C section. It goes 118, then it goes 101 to 118, 201 to 218, and then 219 to 233, and then 118 to 133, and so forth. It goes all the way around the block in the prison. There's 3 sections. That control booth officer is in charge of the whole building. There's no cameras in there, so technically he's watching and observing everything. Phones are ringing. Pop out this inmate. He needs to go to medical. Pop out this inmate, blah, blah, blah. They have day room. So this officer right here is in charge of a lot of things. And then there's 2 officers on the floor, and they're usually in the office. It depends on how many inmates are out, but there's usually 300 inmates in one building, 2 officers on the floor, 1 officer up top, and the 1 officer up top has a lethal weapon right there, and that's a Mini 14. The other officers on the floor don't have no guns, of course, just in case inmates take the guns from us, because we're outnumbered.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we have pepper spray, we have a baton, handcuffs, but the one that's up top has different kind of weapons.
Okay, what is this?
Yeah, that's a big pepper spray, man.
Okay.
That's like a fire extinguisher. It shoots far and it's strong, man. But some inmates, man, doesn't even hurt them. It doesn't even phase them. These dudes are on meds, psych meds, and they're nuts. So sometimes that doesn't even phase them.
Well, what's preventing an ambush or like 80 guys coming at you and it's 80 against 2?
It's just luck of the draw, man. At any time, it could pop off.
It didn't happen?
It never happened when I was there.
Oh,
and it usually never happens with guards. It usually happens against inmates versus inmates with the politics and the gangs and the race. So thank God they don't get along, because if they got along, they would all team up against us every day. So thank God they have the politics.
Oh, okay. So so how else do you protect yourself? You have the pepper spray. You mentioned the baton. What is this?
That's another grenade that you hit that grenade, and it does smoke. That does smoke, and it messes up their breathing, and it kind of blinds them for a while. So say there's a riot, you hit that little pin right there, you release it, and then you throw it, and that thing just like all kinds of smoke comes out of that, and it'll blind those guys. And once they start breathing, they can't breathe. It'll mess up their breathing. Like cyan gas.
What else do you have on you then? Baton, pepper spray,
radio, alarm. That's about it, man. Other than that, instincts.
Oh my God. What is this one? One more.
Those
Thanks,
are
Corey.
like those are going to be rounds from above on the control booth, and those are guys in case they're fighting, and those are sponge rounds, and you shoot directly into the inmate. If they're fighting 2-on-1 or whatever 2-on-2, you just load those up in the gun, 40 millimeter, not millimeter as in real guns, but we call it a 40 millimeter, and then you shoot them direct, and it hurts, man. It's like a tennis ball. It's a sponge foam round, and it hurts you, man. You'll go down. And then we have wooden blocks. We have a bunch of other ones too that you shoot indirect. You don't shoot at the inmate. You shoot before the inmate, and then they break up, and then they just go a bunch of different ways. You're not supposed to shoot them direct, but if you know how to write a report, you can shoot them direct.
You said something before the interview about how many times they would try to distract you. Can you elaborate
definitely,
on that?
man. These guys would talk to you and ask you questions, and all of a sudden you're keying up on them. You're looking down at them, and then meanwhile on your right, 3 guys are jumping another guy, stabbing them, jumping them, and no other inmate's going to tell you like, "Hey, officer, they're fighting over here," because then those guys would get stabbed the next day.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Sometimes they do all kinds of stuff as a deterrent, and you just got to keep your head on a swivel. My head was always on a swivel, man, like all the time. Like walk in, even that's how I live my life out on the streets.
Yeah.
I'm always, you never get comfortable. You never know.
Are you shocked you made it almost 20 years doing this? Like never a big incident, never a tag? Can't believe that.
No, it's a lot of luck involved. And you just go to work every day and hopefully nothing happens to me or my partners. And that's how you live life.
Yeah. It's been an incredible life. And we'll talk more about Circa Survivor with Love My Baxter coming up next. Everyone knows him from Love My Baxter on X, and his name is Todd. He won twice, 2 entries in the first year of Circa Survivor. Also, his thoughts on Grandissimo, week 1 strategy already. What's he thinking for entries and more great prison stories as well coming up on Follow the Money, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Follow the Money on VSiN.
Football's here, our weekly spot with Paul Charchian, Fantasy Football Hall of Famer. He joins us now on the Progressive Guest Line. Follow him on X as well. Any question you might have, he's the guy with fantasy, and we'll talk about what's going on with drafts in the second segment and some strategy as well. We did the NFC North when you were in studio, AFC North today. Some player props, my man. How about Denzel Boston, the rookie, what he can do for the Browns?
Yeah, I'm really interested in what Denzel Boston can do. And our goal here, I'm going to try to give a futures bet for every team in the NFL between now and the start of the season. So we've done the NFC North. Now we're doing AFC North. Let's talk about rookie receiver Denzel Boston. 6 or more receiving touchdowns pays plus 250. 8 or more touchdowns pays plus 750. And offensive rookie of the year is even in play here at 35-1. Let's address this. Obviously, the Browns quarterback situation, totally diseased. Shedeur versus Watson versus Gabriel. Nobody cares. This is the least compelling quarterback training camp battle ever. Don't care who really wins. But because those quarterbacks are so lackluster, we're getting really strong value on a player who is built for touchdowns. You'll remember Denzel Boston's one of the 2 early draft picks that the Browns put into the wide receiver position. KC Concepcion being the other one. Concepcion was taken first. Boston being a little bit overlooked because of that. But remember, he went early second round. He's born to score touchdowns. And this is a touchdown bet, over 6 and over 8 touchdowns. At Washington, Boston scored 11 touchdowns last year. He scored 9 touchdowns the year before that. He's got a tall, rangy build. He's 6'4", 212 pounds. Not physically gigantic like, say, DK Metcalf, but he uses all those traits to come down with tough catches. When the ball is in the air, Denzel Washington believes it is his ball. It is his catch to be made. And I love that. He boxes out defenders. He shields them from the ball. He makes contested catches with his ultra-strong hands. Those are the exact traits you want in a goal-to-go receiver. And that's why I like Boston to top 6 touchdowns and 8 touchdowns, because I think he's going to get 4, maybe 5 scores just from goal-to-go situations. There's not a lot of other Browns to target in that spot. And you look at Boston already playing with Cleveland's first-string offense. I think he's a week 1 starter for the Browns. He's going to nuke Cedric Tillman into the molten center of the earth. That guy's career's on life support.
Yeah.
And new head coach Todd Monken, total wild card, offensive coordinator in Baltimore. He never had a go up and get it guy like Denzel Boston. But Monken did in Tampa Bay when he was offensive coordinator there. He had Mike Evans for 3 years, and Evans scored 25 touchdowns. Now, Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer, and I'm not saying Denzel Boston is, he's just a rookie. I'm not saying he's going to be Mike Evans. Point being, you roll that together, I like the opportunity for Denzel Boston to top 6 receiving touchdowns, maybe 8. And even if you want to go crazy, for a team that's going to be losing a lot and throwing plenty, offensive rookie of the year pays 35-1
Yes.
on Denzel Boston.
A+ break.
Love it.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
How about let's go out to Pittsburgh.
By the way,
what's your take on
while we're talking D Bostons, do you guys remember, because I've inadvertently called him David Boston before. Do you guys remember the 2000 era Cardinals receiver, David Boston?
Yeah,
Mr. Muscles.
Yeah, no kidding. He was on the good
Mr.
stuff.
Muscles. That's right. 8th overall pick. Do you remember his famous training camp situation in which he informed the Cardinals defenders that they needed to be gentle with him because of his pierced nipples? They were very tender, and the Cardinals defenders were getting a little handsy with him up around here, and he didn't like that.
I don't remember
That's
that.
what I always remember about David Boston.
Okay. I remember the arms. I don't remember that one.
True story.
I don't remember that, but that's a great story. I love it. Out to Pittsburgh. How about Aaron Rodgers? What's your take? McCarthy year one, Pittman in at wide receiver. Obviously, you got DK Metcalf.
Yep.
What's your take on what we're going to see from Aaron Rodgers this year in Pittsburgh?
I'm going to go under 3,150 yards. Now, 3,150 yards is a low number. It's not the lowest in the NFL for starting quarterbacks, but it's among the lowest. That would be 200 yards less for Aaron Rodgers than he threw for last year. Now, how are we going to make up those 200 yards? Well, he's been an Iron Man, but I got to factor injury into my calculation. He's 42 years old. He'll turn 43 during the season. He could pumpkin this season. And if Aaron Rodgers misses just one more game than last year, there's your 200-yard differential from last year's yardage total. And now he's sitting at the under 3,150 for yards. Aaron Rodgers, here's the biggest thing you know about Aaron Rodgers and how his game has changed. He's turned into a dump-off quarterback, and maybe the league's biggest dump-off quarterback outside of Tua. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, career lows in basically every stat that involves downfield passing. Intended air yards per pass, completed air yards per pass, and maybe the most troubling, get this, completed air yards per completion, just 3.7 yards downfield. How are you completing passes at only 3.7 yards downfield? Point being, look, Aaron Rodgers' arm is legendary, one of the greatest of all time, but at 42, turning 43, maybe this arm is finally pretty much cooked. He's going to be settling for dump-offs, and dump-off passes just don't fill box scores. And I'm going to mention this as an intangible for the under as well. He has said this is his final year.
Mm-hmm.
All these football players, in pro athletes, they're so wired to be competitive. Maybe, just maybe, that little thing in the back of his mind about retirement is going to be pinging away at the back of his mind. A retirement mindset that sets in, even for a future obvious Hall of Famer like Aaron Rodgers. We're going to take under 3,150 passing yards.
Beautiful. Paul Charchian, our guest, Fantasy Football Hall of Famer. Follow him on X. He's on the Progressive Guest Line. Follow the money. Paulie and Moose Feast on the Sports Betting Network. Okay, a lot of hype with the Bengals. And Burrow has won more than 9 games only twice in his career. But there could be a ton of points in offense that can do. You want to do everything over with Chase Brown. Take it away.
All right. Well, Mark, you didn't see this all last preseason, but Mitch and I would come on VSiN last preseason and talk up Chase Brown every chance we had. We were really excited about the opportunity for Chase Brown last year. None of it hit, and mostly because Joe Burrow got hurt again. And I'd like to think, Mitch and I weren't wrong. We were just a year too early. I'm ready to be hurt again by Chase Brown this year. We're going to go over 824 rushing yards. He was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Over 5.5 rushing touchdowns. That's it. And by the way, when we finally get to the point where we can make some bets for total yardage, you should look into that as well. I'm not seeing a lot of total yardage stuff for Chase Brown yet. A lot of the same talking points as last year for Chase Brown, but this time, hopefully, Joe Burrow playing a full season, making good on all this. Last year, Chase Brown played 4 full games with Joe Burrow. That put him in those 7 full games. I said 4. It was 7 full games. He was on pace for 17 game totals of 1,100 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, and 20 touchdowns. That's what Chase Brown was doing in games with Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow's on the field and he's throwing the ball. Of course, the Jamar Chase and T. Higgins defenses have to respect the passing game so much. It really opens up a lot of opportunity for Chase Brown, who, by the way, no competition at the running back position at all. Most of our viewers right now could not name any other running back on the Bengals, and I don't blame you for forgetting about Samaje Perine and Taj Brooks. Those guys are zero threats here. Also, Chase Brown hasn't missed a game yet as a pro. He's been an Iron Man through 3 seasons so far. We love that about Chase Brown as well. And I'll give you a couple other items. Bengals have the 3rd easiest schedule by last year's winning percentage. They have the 2nd easiest schedule by this year's Vegas win totals. Chase Brown over 825 rushing yards and 5.5 rushing touchdowns.
Can you sneak in more
quickly?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Moose. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how about Mark Andrews? We got about 90 seconds left. How about Mark Andrews down in Baltimore?
All right.
With
Well,
Lamar?
this is short, and this is my least favorite of the bunch. Over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. He's top 5 touchdowns every season since his rookie year. He's just got to find 2 more touchdowns to top the 5 he had last year. And it comes from Isaiah Likely's departure. He vacates 56 targets and an average of 5 touchdowns per year over the last 3 seasons. Andrews' new backup is Durham Smythe, who's purely a blocking tight end. So you figure with Likely gone, if Andrews would have had the same 5 touchdowns he had last year, gets Isaiah Likely averaging 5 more touchdowns. That's how we get to the over 6.5 receiving touchdowns for Mark Andrews.
Total pro. Well done. Excellent. Phenomenal breakdown. Love it. And up next, we'll kick around. Do you take elite tight ends? How early? What's going on with quarterbacks in the draft? And then some of these new players with new teams. DJ Moore, Waddle, Willis, where they're going and what we think they can do from a fantasy standpoint as well. It's his weekly visit. Paul Charchian's back. Football's back. Fantasy Football Hall of Famer. Tweet at him or email as well if you have any questions for Charch as we talk fantasy every week now and try to run through a prop from every team before we get to the season. So we'll kick around what's happening in drafts and advice and strategy coming up on Follow the Money, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.